Welcome to Never by the Book podcast. This is your host, Kelly Scholes. At 24, I was dead broke and a full-blown alcoholic. By age 40, I was completely debt-free and a millionaire. Now I share my secrets to success and transformation with audiences around the world as an author, speaker, and success mentor, and of course, your podcast host. Each Never by the Book episode features a guest who has overcome obstacles to build an incredible life of fulfillment. Today, I am honored to interview Mark Matteson. I met Mark at a conference in Las Vegas back in 2014. I had heard of Mark from others and had been told, you really need to meet this guy. When I finally did, I realized Mark is a mindset guru. He's the kind of person I'd love for everyone to have in their life. I feel honored to have him in mine. He's the kind of person who will always lift you up and inspire you to walk forward to embrace your potential. Our discussion today is primarily focused on helping our listeners, that would be you, answer two compelling questions. What do you want in life and business? And how do you ask for it? Here to find the answer is my friend and mentor, Mark Matteson. Hey, Mark, great to have you.
Hey, Kelly, thanks for having me on your show.
You
and
bet.
I'll give you 10 years to stop saying nice things about me.
10? Well, we've known each other for 6, so I got 4 more left.
That's it.
But I'll keep saying nice things about you until we're both gone.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so I'm really, really honored to have you on today to talk about your journey and your story. You've got me to share my story. You got me to write a book. You helped me with that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Being an author, speaker, coach yourself, you've been a big influence in my life and helped me move forward in that part of my life. And I truly do appreciate that. I want to dig into your story, Mark. And first off, you got some stuff back there behind you. Some of your books, but the thing that I'm drawn to is a picture of you back there.
Oh, dear. Well, this guy was 18 years old in 1976 when he went into the Air Force.
Well, thank you for serving.
Yeah. I went in the Air Force as an air conditioning technician. I was playing basketball on a scholarship, and I had a 3.0 in college, blood alcohol level. And after a year, I left and I joined the Air Force as an HVAC technician. And the driving motivation there was men and women were graduating from college in the mid 70s and they couldn't find all those baby boomers and they couldn't find a job. So I called my uncle in Ohio and I said, hey, what's the future from the blue collar perspective? I wanted to learn a trade. And he said, air conditioning and refrigeration. He said, that's the future. So I took the test and I scored high and they gave me that job. And then 6 months later, I went in the Air Force.
Okay. So you had said that you had a 3.0
blood alcohol level.
So tell me more about that.
I started drinking when I was 12.
Okay.
And I'm the youngest of 3 kids. When you shake our family tree, bottles fall out. I mean, everyone I knew drank, and I was no exception.
Okay.
And about that time, I'd gone in and out of during basketball season, I wouldn't drink. But then after the season was over, all bets were off. And, the drinking got worse over time. And then when I went into the military, it just got even worse. And by the time I finally surrendered, I was 22 years old and I was homeless, carless, jobless, and penniless.
Mm-hmm. So you started drinking at 12 years old. What brought you to that point at 12 years old that you felt that you needed to start drinking? Because I'm the same as you, youngest of 3.
Right.
Same thing. Shake the tree, bottles fall out.
Yeah.
And I started about 12 years old as well.
Well,
so what was it?
I think some of it was nature and nurture, right? Mm-hmm. Nature being those genes are kind of hardwired into my DNA. When I have 1, I have 20, and so there's that. Uh-huh. Then there's the nurture, the environment. I mean, everyone I knew drank. My older brother and sister both drank and got in trouble for drinking. And, I just kind of followed on that path. Mm-hmm. I remember the first time I got drunk, it was like, wow, I want to do this again as often as I possibly can. And I did, but it started to affect me. I got in trouble my junior year. I was kicked out of high school for being drunk at school. I mean, not a.
So I wasn't the only one that happened to.
Oh, buddy. When I read your book, I just laughed because it was like, oh my God, this is twin sons of different mothers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I got booted out of high school and then I got booted out of the military and the drugs and the alcohol kind of just took over my life. And I was working at a record store when I first got out of the military, and this beautiful woman walked in the store, and I asked for her phone number and I started dating her. And after the third date, she said, I love you, but man, you drink a lot. And I said, yeah. And she said, could you slow down? And I said, no, I could stop.
Mm-hmm.
So that was November 79. And I gave it all up for love.
Gave it all up for love, and it was well worth it. So
we've been together 41 years.
Okay. Congratulations.
And I haven't had a drink since. It's interesting, Kelly, the world we live in, mm-hmm. right? After a speech, there's always a big gathering in a bar somewhere, a big convention center, and everyone's drinking. And I was drinking. I had a cranberry juice one day. This was in Phoenix, and the gentleman who's currently the president of Daikin, his name's Doug. He said, "What are you drinking?" And I said, "Cranberry juice." He said, "What?" He said, "What do you have, a urinary tract infection?" I said, "Maybe," And he said, "Let me get you a real drink." I said, "Nah, I better not." I said, "When I have real drinks, I break out in spots." And he said, "What? Spots?" I said, "Yeah, jail, gutter, spots." He said, "All right, well, let me go get you, another cranberry juice."
Yeah. A lot better than the alcohol, right?
Yeah, I don't end up in jail.
So, okay, 24, you said 24 years old when you stopped?
22, actually.
22. Okay. You were 2 years younger than I was. You were 2 years smarter than I was.
Well, I don't know about that. When you find yourself homeless, carless, jobless, and penniless, I'd wrecked the Pinto that my sister had given me, and I still owed her $500 for it. I got fired from my job. My gums were bleeding. I didn't have any money. I had no prospects, and I got another job, and I was on a bus. Taking the bus to work, that was my bottom.
That was your bottom line, huh? Once you hit that, you were done. So how did you crawl out of that hole, Mark? I mean, everybody's rock bottom's different. And everybody's journey of getting out of it's a little bit different. So how did you get out of it?
Well, this family, the Babingtons, brought me into their fold. And I started going to church. I started reading books. I started keeping a journal. And then I started seeing a counselor. And I took one of those John Hopkins questionnaires, ever drink in the morning, ever drink alone, 30 questions. Mm-hmm. And I answered yes to 27 of them. And it said, now turn the card over. And the card said, if you answered yes to more than 3, you're probably an alcoholic. And I know I lied on the other 3. So
yeah.
The counselor said, I said, now what? They said, well, how often did you drink? And here's a great strategy. Lie to people that you're paying money to help you. Okay. That's always a good thing to do.
Yeah.
So I lied and I said, well, I drink a couple times a week. So she said, you should probably go to 2 AA meetings a week. So that's what I started doing. And I went to one too many meetings one day. And then, I found a guy who had what I wanted, and the rest was history.
So AA, you start AA, you sober up, and tell us about your journey into getting into speaking and coaching and writing your book.
Well, it goes back to that German class that I got kicked out of. Susan Hall was my German teacher, and I got an A in her class. I loved her as a teacher. Mm-hmm. And she asked me to come. I was in my mid-20s. I'd started a chimney cleaning business, and I was cleaning her chimney, and she said, Mark, you've really turned your life around. I'm really proud of you. And I said, oh, thanks, Susan. And she said, why don't you come talk to some kids at the high school? And I said, Susan, why would they care what I have to say? She goes, well, all these kids have been in trouble for one reason or another, and you got in a lot of trouble when you were younger, so you have a pretty good story to tell. So I said yes, and the kids liked it, and my phone rang, and it was the basketball coach. He said, hey, my point guard was in that class. Mm-hmm. He said, you need to come and talk to the basketball team because you played basketball here. And I said, okay, what do you want me to talk about? I said, how about goal setting? He said, great. So I gave the talk. They liked it. My phone rang again. And this same kid, Steve Alseth, he tells his aunt, who's the activities director at a different high school. So this woman calls me out of the blue, and she said, I understand you're an inspirational speaker. And I said, really? Who told you that? So she said, we can't pay your normal fee. All we have is $250. So I covered up the phone. I said, honey, this woman wants to pay me $250 to talk to some kids for an hour. And my wife said, take it. So that was the beginning. And then afterwards, about 6 or 7 kids came up to me and said, I got so much out of your talk. That was so great. And one of them said, do you have a book? And I said, no. Right. So that was like a seed that was planted, a rock in my shoe. But then what I did was I started going to every seminar and workshop that came to Seattle. And then I became reacquainted with an old mentor of mine who had taught me how to set goals when I was 14. And now he was the CEO of a very successful learning organization called Edge Learning. And in a reasonably short period of time, he asked me to come to work for him. So I drove to Tacoma every day for 4 years. And that was interesting. Edmonton to Tacoma is 55 miles one way. But I learned the speaking business from Bob Moawad, the late, great Bob Moawad. And then I went out on my own and I started working with contractors. And I've been doing this now for 25 years.
25 years. Okay. Before that, you were working in the HVAC industry.
I was the top project and maintenance salesman for a company in Seattle. I was earning 6 figures. I had a great job. But it was, I just knew I was at a crossroads. I was either going to start my own company, and get into HVAC on my own and be the owner, or I was going to go into this training and education business. And so one day I prayed about it and waited, and the answer was accept the job from Bob. So I did. And then after I left and went out on my own, I wrote this first book here, this one, Freedom from Fear, and it just took off. That book changed everything. That's the one. It changed everything. It sold 150,000 copies, been translated into multiple languages. And it literally, my business exploded after that. And because I struggled the first 2 or 3 years, it was hard. I had a mortgage payment. I had a couple of young kids, but all I did was I just kept going forward, putting one foot in front of the other. And I kept asking the universe for what I wanted, and I wasn't afraid to ask for what I wanted.
Okay. So how you say ask for what you wanted, and you've come up and you worked with my company, and now you mentor me in the speaking and coaching. But tell my audience, talk to my audience about what you mean by ask. You got to ask for it. Okay. About your, talk about your morning ritual and.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what I do every single day is I'm focused on one specific goal, but to start that process, and this is what I do in my seminars, workshops, and keynotes, is I ask the audience to list 5 goals on a 3x5 card. And after they do that, then I say, now prioritize the list, which one's number 1, 2, 3, and so on. And then I say, now take number 1 goal and turn it into what I call the 4 P's of goal achievement: personal, positive, powerful, and present tense. Right. So the first time I did that, it was a basketball goal. I wrote, I'm a good rebounder. And Bob Moawad said to me at 14, he said, does that do anything for you? I said, not really. He said, why don't we spice it up a little? So he grabbed another card and he wrote, I dominate the backboards and I rip the ball off the glass. And I went, wow. He said, can you read that 4 or 5 times a day? I said, I could. He said, just before you go to sleep at night, I want you to visualize blocking your man out and jumping high and ripping the ball off the glass. So I did that for 30 days. And the last game of the season, where they moved me from the sophomore team to the JVs, I'm 14 playing against 17-year-olds, against 5 D1 athletes at Blanchette High School. They went on to play at the University of Washington. And I had 9 rebounds in the 4th quarter, including the winning tip-in. And wow. The coach called me in the office afterwards and he said, do you realize you had 9 rebounds in 1 quarter? Nobody's ever done that before. He said, Mark, you jumped so high at one point, you just ripped the ball off the glass. And Kelly, I saw Rod Serling standing in the corner saying, you're traveling through another dimension, a dimension not only of sight and of sound, but of mind, the Twilight Zone. I mean, I freaked out because no one had ever seen that goal except me. And that completely cemented, my belief in the goal achievement process. So once I have that one goal, back to your question about the hour of power. So what I do is, the first thing I do is I read for 20 minutes in a book in alignment with that goal. And the idea there is I'm looking for fresh water in my pond. Okay. I'm looking for one idea. And then after reading 20 or 30 minutes, then I rewrite my goal at the top of the page in my journal. And then I think about the goal. I just sit there and think. One of my mentors, a pastor, said to me, if prayer is talking to God, meditation is listening. So what I just kind of meditate on the goal a little bit. And sometimes a bunch of ideas come and sometimes nothing. But after 30 days, I always get a bunch of ideas. And then the third thing I do, and this is the piece that pulls it all together, and all of this is in that book, Freedom from Fat. I make a list of the 6 most important things I need to do today, because faith without works is dead, right? So I make a list of 6 things, and then I say, if I was going out of town tomorrow and I could only do one of these, which one's number 1? And that's number 1. And of the 5 remaining, which one's number 2, and so on. Then I estimate how long I think each one of those tasks is going to take, and then I get to work. Mm-hmm. And that's how I start my day every day, the hour of power. It's really simple.
And does it take you an hour every morning?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It does. Okay.
Sometimes it goes a little faster, sometimes a little slower. It depends on, sometimes I'll be reading, Kelly. I read 50 pages a day because I'm a writer. That's part of the reading process. The writing process is reading, right? Reading's the creative center of the mind. That's what Stephen King said. So I read 50 pages a day. So that oftentimes takes more than 20 minutes, obviously. Mm-hmm. But again, I go back to the reading has to be in alignment with the goal, because it's all about getting, fresh water in the pond.
Right. Yeah, that's something I was going to ask you about, where you said the reading's got to be in alignment with the goal. And the other thing you talked about was visual, if I could get it out.
Visualization.
There you go. Yeah.
Yes.
Can you talk some more about that?
Absolutely. So the concept is called flip back, flick up. So you go back and remember a time where you had success, right? I think of that time in the locker room with Coach Wayman, but I also had a moment in Arizona, in Mesa. I was speaking to about 300 contractors for ISL, and I got a standing ovation afterwards. I sold $8,000 worth of books. And I remember sitting in the hot tub that night, just in that afterglow of, adulation and praise. And it was a perfect night. And so what I'll do is I'll close my eyes and I'll remember that in my imagination. I'll go back and remember the feeling I had. It's all about capturing that feeling. And I hold that feeling for just a moment. And then I imagine or visualize the goal, my number 1 goal that I'm working on, manifesting itself. I see the money coming in. I see clients signing the agreement. I see, all the things that are going to lead me towards the achievement of that goal. And I do that in my imagination. And I do that in the morning, and I do it again at night. And when I get up in the morning, I thank God for one more day. I ask him to help me do some good today. And then I think about that goal even before I get out of bed.
Wasn't there a study done at a college where they took like 15 basketball players? They had 5 of them. Do you know that? Can you tell that story?
I can. Maxwell Maltz wrote a book called Cybernetics in 1960. And they had 3 control groups, A, B, and C. And you're exactly right. Group A, they said, we want you to shoot 50 free throws a day. Okay. Group B, we don't want you to shoot any free throws. Just don't even think about free throws. And group C, we want you to visualize shooting 50 free throws a day and making every one. And after 30 days, they tested them again at the free throw line. Mm-hmm. And the first group improved. The ones that shot 50 free throws every day improved by like 15 or 20%. Right. The second group, as you can imagine, didn't improve at all because they didn't practice. The third group actually improved 25%. The ones who visualized actually did better than the ones who actually shot free throws every day. And so what Maltz says in there is, first you work on goals and goals work on you. When you visualize something with positive emotion, it actually is worth 60 times the actual experience in your imagination. So you have the conscious process, the subconscious process, and the creative subconscious process. So conscious process is what we're doing now. We're talking, we're walking around. The subconscious is basically storage. It's like a memory stick or a flip chart page, right? It just stores the information. The creative subconscious is like a thermostat. It's a regulator, like a governor on a lawnmower. It makes sure that we act like us. It keeps us in our comfort zone. But once you import those goals into your subconscious, into that blank slate, the creative subconscious 30, 45 days later says, where have I seen this before? What reference do I have? And then it makes sure that you act like you. So it's a form of conditioning. It's repetition, emotion, and time. Now, here's the crazy part, Kelly. I ask my audiences, how many of you can say the Pledge of Allegiance? And if they're baby boomers, almost all of them, right?
Right.
And the Gen Xers, almost all of them. Millennials, some did, some didn't. But everybody knows the Pledge of Allegiance. And I said, why do you know that? They said, well, I said it like thousands of times. Right. I said, exactly. Now, here's what's fascinating. If I finish this sentence, 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce,
cheese on a sesame seed bun.
There it is. How come you
Yeah.
know that? Same reason.
Same reason.
Now, here's the crazy part. McDonald's got inside your head without you even knowing it.
Yeah.
Through repetition, emotion, and time. Right? So that's how we learn anything. Now, the crazy part about McDonald's is they did it without your permission. At least with the Pledge of Allegiance, you knew you had to say it because the teacher was going to make you do it.
Right.
Right? So why not write your own ad campaign? Why not bombard your subconscious with that one goal that's more important than all the rest until, hundreds, if not thousands of times. And I got to tell you, when I first started speaking, I wrote out a whole bunch of speaking affirmations. I started with 7 of them. A friend of mine sent me a list from some professor at Michigan State, Andrew Bennett, one of my dear friends. He's a TED Talk phenomenon. And those 7 affirmations became kind of the foundation. And I added to them over the years, but I've literally said those affirmations thousands of times. And then I remember one day I got a standing ovation. There was a long line at the book counter, and I went, wow, these affirmations are working. First we work on them, and then they work on us.
Right. Right. And it starts within.
It does. All meaningful and lasting change starts first on the inside and works its way out. Right? I mean, you can have outside in influences as well. I mean, there's no question, right? You get that from mentors, but I think the things that are really meaningful for me initially was basketball, then it was grades. I went from a 1.8 to a 3.8 with my grades in one semester because I changed the thermostat setting. I changed my comfort zone. I changed my self-image. I changed the way I saw myself.
And how did you do that? Can you explain to my audience?
Yeah, I wrote out a goal that said, I love doing homework. I enjoy a 3.8 GPA, which was a total and complete lie, right? Yeah. But here's what's fascinating. The word belief has the word lie right in the middle.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting, right? So I said this goal over and over again because basically when I came home with a 1.8 GPA, my father said, did you want to play college basketball? I said, more than anything. He said, not with these grades. I said, well, what do I need? He said, there's not a coach in the country that'll talk to you unless you have at least a 3.2. So I set a goal to have a 3.2 GPA. And here's what's crazy. First, I started working on the goal, then it started working on me. One day I followed some of the smart kids into the library because I'd never been in there. 1.8 students don't go in the library.
What's a library, right?
Right? So I snuck in there, kind of tiptoed, and there was my friend Katie, and she was sitting with a bunch of other girls and one guy, the valedictorian of our class. I said, Katie, what's up? And I waved, and the librarian went, shh. I'd never been in there. I didn't know the protocol. So I tiptoed over and I go, what are you guys doing? And they said, oh, it's a book study, he said, you're in our class, sit down. So afterwards, I walked her to her locker and she took the books out of the locker. I thought lockers were for storage.
Yeah.
Keep them safe where you need them. Then she taught me to organize all my stuff into files or peaches. Right. And then she said something that completely changed my academic life. She said, Mark, when you get an assignment, do it that night. I said, oh, you don't wait until Sunday? No, do it that day. Get it out of the way. She said, in fact, I get all my homework done on Friday night. That way I have the weekend free. And now here's my point. I knew the what I wanted and I knew the why I wanted, but I didn't know the how. But Katie and a few other people taught me the how. Here's my point. You don't have to know how you're going to get to your goal. You just need to know what you want and why you want it. The how will come over time. And then, the second quarter, I had a 3.8. I had a 3.8 in college, made the dean's list. It's all about dialing in a new thermostat setting, a new self-image.
Well, talking about the how and the who, you talk a lot about books and people. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
So when I sent the manuscript to Charlie Tremendous Jones, my mentor, he was a speaking mentor of mine. I sent the manuscript and I just wanted his opinion. And he called 2 weeks later and he said, if you can write another book, actually, here's how he said it. If you can write another book like that, you won't need to speak anymore. Woo! That's how he said it. Because I love this book. I want to publish it. And I said, wait a minute, you're a publisher? He goes, what do you think Executive Books is, an underwear store? And I said, well, how does this whole publishing thing work anyway? And he goes, well, I'm going to print 10,000 copies and you're going to sell them in the back of the room. And I said, I'm sorry, the back of what room? He goes, when you speak, the room that you speak in. I said, oh, right. Like I knew. I said, well, how much do I charge? He goes, whatever you want. So I thought, well, I'll just charge $20. Everybody's got a $20 bill in their pocket. And I started selling my books in the back of the room, and it just took off. And Charlie taught me the book business. He really did. I did 4 books with him before he passed away. And my 5th book right there, Freedom from Fat, I've self-published. So now I'm a publisher in addition to being a podcaster like you. So, but I never understood the power of a book until Charlie said to me, you'll be the same person in 5 years, except for 2 things: the books you read and the people you associate with. Mm-hmm. And when I really started to understand what that meant, what he was really saying was, look, are the people you're associating with helping you get where you want to go? Are they anchors or speedboats? Are they pulling you forward or are they dragging you down? And are the books you're reading in alignment with the goals that you want? Because those 2 factors, people and books, are going to have the biggest impact on how your life turns out in the next 5 years. And when I started changing comfort zones and started hanging around people who read a lot more than I did, when I started reading the books that they were reading, my life exploded into change. I read a couple books a week. I have since 1990. And that kind of makes up for my solid year of junior college and flunking high school English.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing, you know, when I'm teaching my financial classes, it's the same thing. I mean, you want to learn about finances, you want to become wealthy, hang around people that are debt free and know how to save. I mean, same thing. Your income is going to be within the closest 5 people of who you hang out with.
Yes, I read that. Tally up how much each of those 5 people make. Yeah. Divided by 5, your income's within 10% of that average.
Yes.
And so how important is it to throw yourself out of your comfort zone and start hanging around smarter people, wealthier people, more fit people?
Everything, yeah.
I lost 50 pounds and 10 inches off my waist. And after I did that, I wrote Freedom from Fat. But one of the things I started doing, Kelly, was I started interviewing people, middle-aged men and women who lost the weight and kept it off. And they said things like, I cut my portions in half. I stopped eating bread. I started walking every day. I joined a gym. And so I just started writing down what these folks were saying. It was amazing. And then I started doing what they said. And it came down to 3 things: portions, quality, exercise. And I know you're a runner, so you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, you had wrote that book probably about a year after we met.
That's right. And I lost the 50 pounds and 10 inches off my waist, which is even more important, right?
And you've kept it off.
What's that?
And you've kept it off.
I have. Well, you know, I got a little COVID cushion. I got about 8 pounds that I got to get rid of, but you know, that's all right. I know what to do.
That's all right. Yeah, you'll get there. So tell us what Mark's doing now. How can people get a hold of Mark?
Well, Mark likes to talk about himself in the third person. So I'd be happy to answer that question, Kelly. Since I got this hat on, I may as well talk about it like this.
There you go.
Well, let's see. You can contact me. You can call me. You know, the baby boomers like the phone call. 206-697-0454. That's 206-697-0454. Or you can go on my website, www.sparkingsuccess.net. And on that website, you can subscribe to my monthly newsletter, which is free. You can subscribe to my podcast, which is free. And if you want to send me an email, you can do that through the website or just send it to mark@sparkingsuccess.net. And the first hour is always free. So if you want my help and you'd like to talk, it's kind of like Baskin & Robbins, Kelly. You know, you remember going to Baskin & Robbins and saying, I'd like to try that sherbet, right? So they give you like a little container with a tiny little spoon, right? So that's what I do. I give everybody a little spoon and a little cup of knowledge. And then if they like it, then we set up something formalized. I've got to type up an agreement this morning, actually. I have a client who wants some additional coaching for his salespeople.
Well, in your books, you know, you've taught me that our books are our business card. And I've probably given away more books than I've sold already.
Well, it goes back to what Charlie Jones told me. He'd sold 2 million copies of Life is Tremendous. And God bless Charlie and, you know, God rest his soul. But Life is Tremendous was okay. It was a good book, but it wasn't great. But he sold 2 million copies. So I said, Charlie, how did you do that? He goes, well, Mark, tremendous Mark. What I did was I gave 200,000 away. Exactly how he said it. And the light went off. So I was on an airplane. Well, like you, I'm on airplanes all the time, every week. Pre-COVID, I was flying every week. And this flight attendant had this amazing attitude. And so I gave her a copy of Freedom from Fear. And unbeknownst to me, she was a blogger. Sky Chick was the name of her blog. She posted a blog about me and about the book and how much she liked it. And then one of the big internet companies picked it up and it exploded. It went out to millions of people. Mm-hmm. And my web guy called me and goes, "We just sold 800 copies of Freedom from Fear." And I said, "How?" He goes, "Some blogger named Sky Chick," right? And I always started to understand what Charlie meant when he said I gave 200,000 away.
Yeah.
So I give them away when I'm traveling. I always have some in my trunk. I also have some in my bag. And if I find someone who has an extraordinary attitude, I'll just give them one of my books.
The more you give, the more you get, right?
Johnny Appleseed, baby.
Johnny Appleseed, yeah.
Yeah.
So, you have any parting shots for my guests?
Yeah, I do, actually. There's a film called How Do You Know with Jack Nicholson, Reese Witherspoon, Paul Rudd, and Owen Wilson. James L. Brooks wrote the script. It came out in 2013. I think it was Nicholson's last film. I don't think he's done one since. But Reese Witherspoon plays a retired softball player who part of the retirement package has to go see a counselor. And it's played brilliantly by Tony Shalhoub, the guy from Monk. So she walks in there and she goes, "I don't even know why I'm here." She said, I'm going to go. I don't think this is necessary. He goes, "That's okay." So she gets to the door and she stops and she goes, "Okay, I do have one question. Is there one thing that you can tell me that would fix any problem for any person every time?" He said, "Yeah, I think I can answer that." She said, "Great. What is it?" He said, "Figure out what you want in life, what you really, really, really want, and then learn how to ask for it." And I literally stopped the film and I grabbed my journal and I wrote it down because I went, "Oh my gosh, there it is." All those goals I wrote from the time I was 14, I just figured out what I wanted and I wrote them down. And then I took action. I asked myself, what do I need to do every day to move towards those goals? Because it says in the Old Testament, faith without works is dead, right? But it also says in the New Testament, ask, seek, knock, right? Ask and ye shall receive, seek and ye shall find, knock and the door will be open. So we have to ask for what we want, and then we have to have the courage to do the things necessary every day to reach the goal. It's one day at a time.
One day at a time, and we learned that a long time ago, didn't we?
Long time ago.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Oh,
Kelly, your future's so bright, it burns my eyes, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I want to thank everyone for listening to Never Buy the Book. Share it with someone you care about, and don't forget to subscribe through your favorite podcast app so you'll never miss an episode. As we close today, remember, if you're not doing it by the book, it might just mean you're on to something great. Until next time, be great.